So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our C.A.L webinar. My name is David Cerna, and we have our Using Qualtrics for lots of reasons with Professor Debra Cohen, Professor of Law. So our ultimate goal for today is really getting started with Qualtrics and learning best use cases. In part one today, I'll talk about accessing Qualtrics within my UDC. In part two, Professor Cohen will go over why use Qualtrics with some real use cases and examples. To end our webinar today, we'll do a quick closing with next steps and Q&A time. You can feel free to use the chat box throughout or unmute anytime during this workshop if you do have a question or just want to follow up with us. Professor Cohen, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Deb Cohen. I teach at the law school. I've been at UDC since 2012, and I am a lawyer by training and a problem solver by action. So a lot of what we talk about today will be how I had to sort of solve some problems as we navigated our way through a pandemic.
Yep, and hasn't that been fun? I just heard that there's a new variant, another one, so there you go. So part one, I'll talk about accessing Qualtrics within my UDC. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. So if you haven't accessed Qualtrics before, we at the UDC community, we have access to this. So to access this very quickly, if you go to my UDC, the homepage, look on the left-hand side, click on Quick Launch. Once I click on that, you'll see a bunch of different software that we have here. If you don't see Qualtrics here, click on Load More, and you'll see the Qualtrics button right there. Once I click on that, you're able to access Qualtrics. Let me go ahead and sign in again. Once I do the sign in, give me a second. You know what? I did this beforehand and I'm doing it again. So there we go. Once you do that, you'll go ahead and see Qualtrics, that homepage right here where you can create a survey and launch it. Are there any questions about accessing Qualtrics that I can answer? Anyone here? Okay, excellent. So I'll go ahead and move on to part two with Professor Cohen. And for part two,
my turn to share screen.
It's your turn, yes. So Professor Cohen will go over the suggested uses of Qualtrics, talking about why use this in the classroom, benefits of using Qualtrics, and a walkthrough of real use cases. And I'll go ahead and hand it off to Professor Cohen. Thank you so much.
Okay, so if I glance over here, I'm set up with 3 screens, and that's just this one. When I had to do remote teaching, I have 2 others over there. So, because when you do a class of 50, you need 2 screens to see 50 people. All right, so I'm Deb Cohen, and I discovered Qualtrics thanks to Rebecca Graham, who brought it into the university, and it has been a wonderful addition. And so today I just want to talk about some of the reasons. So I did start by having a little survey because I always think that it's better to be interactive. And so, David, if you could share in the chat again that link, that would be really helpful. And if everyone could take a moment and do complete the survey, we'll have something to look at in a few moments. So that would be helpful. It's really quick and have you use Qualtrics and things like that.
Thank you, Professor. So I did put that in the chat box for everyone here. I'm also filling it out as well.
And in doing that, I tried to introduce a couple of different kinds of questions so that you could see the way I did a little bit of logic. So you could see, I'll tell you when we look at it, how it's skipped depending on which answer you gave. I didn't know what the experience level was with Qualtrics in our group, which is always helpful when we're going to talk about it. So, and if you type a quick yes in the chat box when you're done, we'll know to move on. And this is the sneaky way we're interactive during the real classroom to make sure people are not just faces on their screen, they're actually there.
So I do have a question about that, Professor Cohen. So when you are doing a remote class, do you use any of the built-in tools like the reactions, emojis to kind of get a feel for the room?
I require everyone to have screens on. Cameras on.
Yeah.
I am a cameras on required because the ABA requires us to confirm that we had attendance. And if there is just a picture, I cannot confirm someone was actually there. So I actually require cameras on. I'm known for it.
That is true. I'll keep my camera on then today.
You don't have to, but it's fine.
Okay.
All right, so let's move on. So I wanted to talk about some suggested uses of Qualtrics. So the one that everyone thinks of first is surveys. And probably most of us have at least done one UDC survey that was done in Qualtrics. So we've all probably done that. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time there. That's the obvious use of Qualtrics. The next one, which is also probably pretty obvious, is the evaluations. And that you can do your student evaluation, your program evaluation with a Qualtrics form. And one of the nice things is that it has logic there, as we'll look at in a few moments, so that if someone says yes, you can delve into that, what they liked most. And if they say no, you can find out what was wrong. But you don't make everyone go through every question. And that's always a way to help keep your surveys streamlined, because people do get survey exhaustion. So, UDC has gone to online evaluations. They don't use Qualtrics for it right now. They're using something else, TK20, but this would be a way to do it because it gives you some nice results at the end that you can use. But I wanted to take it into the classroom because that's what, as a professor, is the most interesting to me. So the way I use Qualtrics in the classroom is three main things. The first one is opening assessments. And as David will tell you, I'm very into teaching and learning, right? That's why I'm a professor. And so for me, I've spent a lot of time thinking about the science behind learning. And one of the most important things is to find out where everyone is starting. Because prior knowledge can have a huge impact on how people assimilate the information you're covering in a given day. It's also a really, really good way to figure out how prepared the people are for the class. So what I often do is I start with an opening assessment. And my opening assessment here, you'll see this one has a timer, and it requires them to give their name. And then this one was just definitions. Could they go through and in the 5 minutes type for me some legal rules that they were going to need to be able to write out on an essay or a bar exam? Okay, so this is really helpful, and I can pull up results. I'm switching to my results so you can see. So I can now, in the classroom while they're doing it, go to my results. And this one is just questions, so it's not a particularly useful one to look at, but I can see, do a scan down and see, were they basically getting it? I can export this to an Excel data sheet, which I can then grade if I want. You can do it either by sending it by an anonymous link and requiring them to give their names, or you can do it by sending it by email, and then your Excel spreadsheet gives you that email automatically, so you don't have to ask their name. But so you can do that, and it allows me to sort of get a feel for whether they are in fact doing what they should have done or not. So another one we did was, sometimes I do these during class. So let's go back over here for a second. And if we were during class, for example, what we did the other day was we did this next one, which was multiple choice questions. And here I can really get in the classroom an immediate response from them. If I go to the results, it will give it to me in a visual, and I can see on the multiple choice questions how they actually performed. So that's one of the multiple choice questions. And the vast majority of them got it right, but clearly a bunch didn't, not less than 5 each. So that one was pretty good. And so also when I do this in class, I get a feel without making them raise their hands for, are they getting it? Plus I can record it later on to see, I can sort it on my Excel data sheet and see how many people are getting them all right, or are the same people getting all of them wrong, or is there some issue? The next thing I really like to do is at the end of class, I like to ask students to make sure they give me their muddiest point. So again, this is a way in learning to get students right at the end of class to focus and say, what am I confused about? Let me ask right now and get the clarification while it's still fresh. because if I don't do it while it's fresh, they tend to lose it. Sometimes I do the clearest and muddiest point. Sometimes I just do the muddiest point, but I have a link that is available to them open all semester where they get to do this. Okay, for some reason that one was not a live link. So this in-class engagement was the multiple choice questions I just showed you. So we have the opening assessments they come in at the very beginning of class, sometimes right before class. I let them have a few minutes to do that. One of the things I love about Qualtrics is this timer. I can auto advance them and it will submit for them. So I get to know how long they're taking on it or whether they were not paying attention, et cetera, because they didn't do it when I put up the window. And so those are some of the things. Let me go back to my muddiest point one. So again, these are different ways to do it. And these are pretty easy to do. And the nice thing about Qualtrics is I create a folder for each class and I keep all my assessments for each class and then I can copy and paste. But I just wanted to sort of let you into the backside for a second because I don't know how many of you. So David, yeah, I resend the link out periodically, but Qualtrics tells me on that dashboard when I get a new response to something that's open. So yeah, I know when I get a new response and can look to see what came in, but it also then gives me the ability at the end of the semester to see what all the muddiest points were. They're all in one place, which is kind of a nice little thing.
That's a great idea. Do you also get an email notification once someone does that?
It probably has a way to do that, but
Okay.
I have not set that up. I'll need to look into that.
Okay.
I'm in Qualtrics every day, basically, so that's not been necessary for me, but it would be a good idea. And I would suspect that there are ways to be notified. So notice in this one, I asked them, because this is not an email link, you can create a mailing list for your class. And so for my opening assessments, every class, I just email out an opening assessment to them. And here's your link for today's opening assessment. And they know to get that out of their email. But this muddiest point, I just want them to be able to go into whenever they want. So it's just a link. So I require them to give me their name. See here, I have a forced response. And that allows me to know who to reach out to, that I don't have to just sort of blast an announcement. Anyway, let's go back and see what we got from our little survey. See, so for the new Qualtrics webinar, see how it says I have 6 new responses. So we can go and look at our responses. Isn't that exciting? Okay, if some of you want to turn on your picture so I'm talking to someone, this is why I require cameras on in the classroom. So again, here is, and we can turn on visuals too, but so here we have our answers, right? Have you taken a survey created with Qualtrics? Have you created one? And then asking, depending, if you said, have you taken a survey, it's asked you, it asked you whether you were, if you said you hadn't used it, it asked you whether you were interested in learning. If it said that you do you find it easy to use? So see, depending on which question you answered is whether you got a different logic. And so that's a really easy thing to do. So now let's do a quick into the inside of this survey so you see what you took. And literally, I put this together in about 5 minutes last night when David sent me the list. Okay, so here it is. And I'll just play with it while we're doing it so you see. So this one is just a text graphic. So you can always, by clicking the plus, either way, insert a question above or below, and that minus sign will delete. So I can insert one above, and it defaults to multiple choice, but right over here on the left is the list of options, and it's long. I haven't used them all. Text entry is what I used for those vocabulary questions. And in a text entry question, you can make it a single line, or you can make it an essay box. Now, as I'll talk about later, the only problem with an essay box is Qualtrics doesn't give you formatting. So if someone types paragraphs and paragraphs, it can get a little hard, okay? And you can, as I said, add requirements and say, force a response. Or if they skipped it, you can request a response before they submit. So that sort of allows you to have some control over that. The most common one is multiple choice. You answered some of those. And the nice thing is that Qualtrics lets you choose the number of answers you wanted. And it really kindly gives you suggested choices. So I can't do it now in this one because we've already recorded answers, but it will tell you, like, if you choose a 5-point scale, it will give you Likert scales for agree to disagree, very interesting to not interesting. But if you don't want people to take that middle ground, you can use a 4-point scale. Or if you want more gradations, you can go up. So that gives you a lot of control. It also lets you decide whether to do your responses in a drop-down menu to select a box, or what I usually do is just the simple list, because that's usually how law multiple choice get done. Okay. It also lets you decide if you want to align vertically or horizontally. So you really can do some space saving, you can do some formatting, and I haven't even begun to touch the surface of all the really cool things you can do. I've just done some basics. So here you have you taken a Qualtrics survey before? And if you said yes, see here, you see display this question if you've taken a survey before. And it asks you to rate the most recent, and I used the star level. You can use all kinds of things, but again, it was just an opportunity to show you a different kind of style and the logic. See, for any question that you want to display logic, the display logic button is right here under question behavior. It has skip logic and display logic. So you can skip questions or display questions based on. I haven't gotten into all the JavaScript. I will tell you that for the multiple choice questions, if you go here under this bottom one, survey options, under scoring, you can set it and you can score them so that if you want to say that's going to be a score, that's going to be a score, you can set up scoring options here, and then you can tell people at the end how they scored, and your spreadsheet, which you download, will give you the score. Again, really good if you're using it to do participation points or to do scoring of other things. So, Dr. Brown, everything is not necessarily anonymous. It depends on if you want it to be anonymous, right? If you just send out the anonymous link, it is anonymous. If you send it out by an email link, in the downloaded spreadsheet, you can track which response came from which, but you could also pull the data and separate it. I usually want to know, so if I'm not sending by a email, I force a name. But this is because my class, I give participation points. So this is part of, they get a certain percentage for a good faith effort. So any of them are possible. There are probably many more ways to do it. Again, I am still a novice in Qualtrics. It is really quite a powerful tool, and they do have a really good help. Any question I've had, I've been able to go to the Qualtrics help, and they have a bootcamp help sort of series of things, and I've been able to find an answer in under 5 or 10 minutes. So that's been very, very helpful to me. So that's some of how I've been using it in terms of opening assessments, in-class engagement, and then I have used it for graded assessments. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the tale of the terribles, and then at the end I will open it up for questions on whichever parts you'd like to go back. I hate to be the one who does all the talking all the time. I prefer discourse. Anyway, so the problem. How do you administer a closed book assessment, which has multiple choice and essay, that had to be given simultaneously in person and remotely using blind grading? Okay, there are a lot of variables there. That's probably a regression in itself, Dr. Yarish, but we won't even go there. So usually we're in the classroom. And usually our registrar assigns everyone a blind grading number. We call them B numbers. And all the two students take them simultaneously in one place, or we have accommodated people taking them somewhere else. And The bar exam still does paper and bubbled Scantron, so we do paper and bubbled Scantron. And the essay is a paper question like the bar, where they can type their answer into a secure portal called Exam4. It locks out the rest of their computer. It backs up every 5 seconds. You can't lose it. They can't access it. It has worked really well for years. And then came COVID. When we were 100% remote, I used our honor code. I used them logged in through WebEx, cameras on, and then using their computers for Exam4 and other things. It was challenging. But this high flex, I had a real problem. So the law school requires we do blind grading for final exams. There are 90-minute there are 3-hour assessments there. Lockdown browser, timeout. Let me do a tangent. UDC has an amazing amount of technology available. I do not think we as faculty know a lot about what the technology is. I think sometimes the technology is here before it gets wheeled out. Like I discovered we had WebEx before most of the people discovered we had WebEx. And I was using it when other people were trying to use Blackboard Collaborate way early in the first weeks of the pandemic. So we have Respondus lockdown. Lockdown locks down the computer so that the computer will not let them access anything else. Respondus is video monitoring so that it records the student so that they can't cheat. Now, if you search the web, you'll find all the ways to circumvent it. It is far from perfect, but it is, we hope, along with an honor code, sufficient. I couldn't use our Exam4 because Exam4 locks out everything else and wouldn't let them run Respondus for camera monitoring. So normally I would have just said, use your Respondus, but then I couldn't monitor the away people. So I said, okay, I'll use Blackboard because Blackboard had Respondus lockdown. But Blackboard, which has a timer and can automatically submit and has anonymous grading, has a very limited anonymous grading. Once you choose anonymous grading, you can't use multiple choice questions. In fact, you can't do anything except use a text box. And I'll show you all of this in 1 minute. So Qualtrics XM is great for multiple choice. Perfect. But it's not great for an essay because it doesn't have formatting if you're giving them a long essay. And you can't use the file upload. Oh, by the way, in Qualtrics, you can also have them upload files if that's how you want to use submissions. Can't use that with lockdown browser. So I'm sitting here saying, how do I do this? And my IT people said I can't. And you just don't tell me no. That is, you know, I was a computer science consultant in my youth and childhood before many of you were even, some of you were even born. So anyway, let's see if we can get back to, it wants me to do that again. Okay. And hopefully it's going to get to me. Yes. Okay. So here's what we did. And this is how it looked to the students. And then we'll go back to how it looks on the back end. So I did it. I made it work. Now, it worked perfectly in our practice run. The day of our final was the day after the Amazon web servers had crashed. And it turns out Respondus Lockdown is hosted on the Amazon web servers. So we had some issues. However, this technology worked. Now, this was what the students got. Notice there is a link to instructions, a link to the multiple choice questions, those are the Qualtrics, and a link to the essay. And if a student were to click on them, it opens another tab and they can go back and forth. So that was my PDF of instructions. And here was the essay question. They can go back to the instructions, the essay question, the assessment, and then here was my Qualtrics. And so I had to give them really, really, really specific instructions that they had to make sure to submit before they quit out of lockdown browser. But no one had that problem. The instructions were really clear on this. And so we told them what they had to do, and they could answer all of their multiple choice questions. Boom, boom. And when they were done, they could submit. There are a lot of them. Now, each of these had a response requested because I didn't want someone to accidentally submit before they'd answer. So this allowed them to, oops, no, I didn't mean to leave one unanswered, but we'll continue without answering and submit. So let's go back to the back end of this. Hopefully they'll still be pretty easy for me to find because, oh, we have to go to Blackboard with that, sorry. So here's the back end of the Blackboard part of this. There were a lot of pieces. And so let's take this down for a second. Let me go on here. So I want to give a couple of tips for some potholes I fell into the first couple times I tried to do this. Number one, if you want to embed a PDF into your Blackboard assessment, upload it to your Blackboard. Keep it hidden, but upload it to Blackboard and copy the link from Blackboard. Otherwise, Apples seem to have a hard time accessing the PDF. Macs were, PCs were fine, but Apples didn't. So to accommodate everyone, the links, as you saw, open in separate browser tabs, and students can switch back and forth. But if any of those need to be submitted prior to closing out, you should make sure they are. So I just wanted to add those. So I have just given a probably somewhat rambling set of ins and outs of why I use Qualtrics and why I think it's a wonderful option in the classroom. And I would love to open it up to any questions or comments or other suggestions on how you've used it that I haven't thought of yet.
And Professor Cohen, this has been wonderful. It's actually making me think about how we can better assess, for these webinars for the CAL team. So I did want to read some of the questions in the chat box. So I have one from JB. Can you duplicate surveys to easily edit and use them again?
Yes, you can. So let me see if I can pull that back up for you. And so if you're in Qualtrics, so see right here, clearest, muddiest point. If you click on these three dots, you can copy a project and rename, or copy a project and name it something else. So I can copy this project and I can name it clearest, muddiest point copy. And so that's real, and you can save it in another folder if you want. So yes, it's very easy to do that. Excellent. Next question.
Next question I see is, how much time do you recommend for finishing a survey? So I believe that's for, you had a 6-minute timer for one of the surveys that you showed. How much time do you usually use for students for surveys?
So it depends on what I'm doing, right? For my opening assessments, they are max 5-6 minutes because they're really my opening assessments are designed to encourage my students to be more self-reflective because that's such an important skill in learning and in lawyering. You can't wait until you submit something to the judge to figure out if it's good enough. You need to have a good sense of, is it good enough before you submit? So I want my students developing that. And I want my students doing these opening self-reflections and saying, maybe I didn't prepare quite well enough for today. I don't know that. Maybe I should go back and look at that. So it's designed to engage them and give them something. They can download these. You can make it so they can download their survey at the end of it so they can keep a PDF copy. And I do that. And so they can keep a copy. And I really often don't give them the answers. I want them to struggle with it and come and ask or figure it out amongst themselves because that's the level we're at. So on multiple choice questions, the bar exam gives less than 2 minutes. So I never give more than 2 minutes a multiple choice question. The kind of definitions I'm asking for, they should be able to write like this. And so I only give a couple minutes. And they pretty quickly know, oh, I need to practice that. When I'm doing like something that's more in depth, I'll give more time. An essay would get 15 or 20 minutes or 30 minutes, depending.
Excellent. And then I see another one. How long does it usually take for you to make a 36 question Qualtrics like this?
Okay,
I like the
so
one you showed earlier.
let me do one other thing. And when you use the timer, it has lots of options. You can show the timer and you can show a count up or a count down. And it does the timer in seconds, so you have to do a little arithmetic. So my 6, you have to do the multiplication and come up with the right number of seconds because it does the counters in seconds. So
do some math.
Just full disclosure.
Yeah.
How long does it take? So my questions, I write my questions separately to transfer them in. I'm probably kind of slow. I do a lot of cut and paste. So let's go back and do a couple things. Let me show you a little bit about the editing. So let's go to question 1. Now, you can just type or you can click on this rich context and you have a whole editor where now we can format and bold and you can make so I can go back and say I can make this 14 point and I can change the font in this to Comic Sans. And so you have a lot of flexibility in your questions. I have not worked with the pipe text yet, so I can't tell you about it. Eventually I'll figure that out, but I haven't. So you can do this and then, and again, on your answers for stuff too, you can go into the rich context editor if you need more. One of the really cool things, and one of my questions did, is if someone says no and you want to allow them to comment, you can add a text box after it so they can comment. So those are the other kinds of things. The one thing I have not figured out if there's a better way, and there probably is with an Excel spreadsheet, which is correctly delimited to just download it into Qualtrics, but I haven't done that yet. They do talk to CVS forms, so I suspect there is, but I haven't gotten there yet. I'm still pretty novice.
But this has been wonderful. I see from Fatma, can I change the white background of the survey?
I'm pretty sure you can, but I have not tried to do that. You can also put it into blocks. So if you only want to have one set of blocks, if they answer this way, you can make your logic go to different blocks. But yes, here's the fields. So you can change your layout, the logo to UDC. So that's the UDC theme. I don't know if we have other colors. You can change your next buttons. You can make them say other things. You can have a progress bar, which shows them how far they are if they're all on different pages. I often don't break the pages for them. You can do that. As I said, I have not gotten into that yet, but they also have the ability to do it on mobile. So, and when you do a preview, so as you're doing it, they'll let you preview your survey and it will show you your preview. I have new mobile view off, but you can turn it on and you'll see how your survey would look if you did it on a mobile. So that's also very helpful if you're planning on doing that. There is a spell checker that will run through your survey and do the spell checker for you, which I always need. Anytime I forget, I'm sorry. There are a couple of other things that I have. So that's the preview. Oh, when you publish a survey, it gives you a review. And this one is telling me my survey is only fair. And the reason my survey is only fair is that I use this matrix. And this matrix is not good for universal accessibility. So those of you who are really focused on trying to create universal design and accessibility, I actually kept it in intentionally so I remember to say that. Some of the questions are not as universally design oriented as others, and we probably should go through at some point and mark them or have a primer to that, because it's really frustrating to have done your whole question and then realize I should change it because it's not universal design. Other questions that Dr. Yarish, if there's other things you want to talk about, you know where to find me, Debra, Debra.Cohen, Cohen, at udc.edu.
Excellent. And I'll go ahead and add that as well into the chat box. And there is something I would actually like to share. So one of the things that—
Let me stop sharing then, or did you stop me?
I didn't stop you yet, but I can go ahead and try. Okay. So one of the things that we're trying to do more of is use QR codes to really disseminate information very quickly, especially in a high flex environment. So one of the things that I really like about using Chrome, for example, is I opened up your survey right here. And let's say that I want to share my survey with my students very quickly. So if you are using Chrome, and this is for anyone here, if you go to the right corner in the address bar, click on that, and then QR code. And you can try this now if you have your phone on you. But the survey that Professor Cohen shared earlier, I'm able to go to scan it. And then I can open it directly from my phone and I can just do the survey from there. So that's another quick way. I know that you're also teaching in high flex. And then Pat and I, we also help other professors with high flex classes. This is a way to share that information very quickly if they have like a smartphone with them. Right? Something I just discovered right now with this
what's
Qualtrics
really
survey.
cool is that we're all discovering a whole bunch of really neat things as we go. And it's really quite nice.
Yeah, excellent. And I went ahead and put some resources in the chat box for everyone here. If you do want to see Professor Cohen's introductory survey, the link is in the chat box. This is a great way to also see a template of a real life survey that Professor Cohen is using. Her email address is there as well, debra.cohen@udc.edu. My email, david.cerna@udc.edu. We do have a survey, and you know, now that I've taken this webinar, I do want to change that survey to a Qualtrics survey, but currently it's on Microsoft Forms. I am motivated now to change that, but that's our current one. Please let us know how this webinar was, if there are any other topics you'd like to see. For our PD and office hours, you'll see that in the chat box as well. Next week, we have a great webinar with Professor Yarish, who was also in this webinar, and she'll be talking about Blackboard Groups tool. We also have our recorded webinars on YouTube and our website. Yeah. Are there any other questions from the group? Or Professor Cohen, any final thoughts before we say goodbye today?
I look forward for you all emailing me in the next weeks and months, telling me all the new wonderful ways I can use Qualtrics.
Yeah, Professor Cohen, I can't thank you enough. You know, working with you, I met you first in August, and working with you on this webinar, it's been such a pleasure. I always learn so much from you. You recommended the book, The New Science of Learning. So I did get that from the library, so I'll start reading that this weekend. Thank you so much. I would love to work with you again in the future. So I appreciate all your time and efforts on this webinar.
Thank you.
Yeah. So for everyone else here, thank you so much for joining us today. This will be on our YouTube channel. Please email myself or Professor Cohen if you have any other questions. And I know it's a rainy day, so stay dry. It's also cold. I'm from San Diego and it's springtime, but I'm cold here. But thank you everyone for joining us today, and we hope to see you very soon. Bye-bye. Thank you, Professor Cohen.
Has recording stopped?
Let me go ahead and record that or stop it.